Poor food truck girl ignored the Millionaire CEO in line until he whispered, "Still remember me?" The streets of Old Town Nashville were just waking up. It was a little past 7 a.m., the time when the city began to hum with life. The sharp hiss of bus brakes echoed, shopkeepers lifted their shutters, and the crisp autumn air carried the mingling scents of roasted coffee beans and sizzling bacon. Among the morning chaos, a bright yellow-orange food truck stood out at the corner of Pine and 4th. Its name, Sunrise Bites, was painted in cheerful letters, like a smile on wheels. Inside the truck, Natalie Quinn tied her faded sunflower apron a little tighter. Her hands were already busy flipping breakfast wraps and pouring coffee for the line of regulars. The chalkboard menu beside her had smudges from the early rush, proof that mornings were always her busiest hours. Among the people waiting was Caleb Walker. His tailored navy coat was unbuttoned, his silk tie loosened, and his dark hair slightly tousled. One hand gripped his phone, lit with unread emails that demanded his attention. The other rubbed across his face as if trying to erase the exhaustion from last night's restless sleep. Caleb wasn't just another customer. He was the CEO of Walker Innovations, a name plastered across Forbes covers and business headlines. Yet here, at the corner of Pine and 4th, he wasn't Mr. Walker, billionaire. He was simply a man in line for breakfast. Just as he stepped forward, Natalie's voice rang out clearly from inside the truck. "Morning, everyone. I'm sorry, but we've only got one breakfast wrap left." Caleb opened his mouth to claim it, but Natalie leaned forward, her blue eyes steady. "I think Mr. Hargrove was ahead of you," she said, nodding to the elderly man behind Caleb. Caleb turned, surprised. The old man, leaning on his cane with a navy pin glinting on his cap, blinked as though he hadn't expected the kindness. "Same as always, sir?" Natalie asked warmly. The man smiled. "You remembered?" "Of course. Egg, no cheese, extra salsa. Coming right up." Caleb stood frozen. He wasn't annoyed, just caught off guard. People rarely looked past his wealth or importance. But this woman had, without hesitation. "Well," Caleb muttered under his breath, a faint smile tugging his lips, "that's fair." Without even looking back, Natalie replied matter-of-factly, "First come, first served. Doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or a baker." The casual remark made Caleb chuckle softly. It had been a long time since someone treated him like anyone else. He stepped forward. "I guess I'll take whatever you still have left." Natalie finally turned to face him. She was younger than he expected, late 20s, with her blonde hair tied up in a messy bun. Her eyes, calm and clear, reminded him of a lake from his childhood. "Lucky for you," she said with a playful tilt of her brow, "we never run out of coffee." She handed him a steaming cup, her fingers brushing lightly against his. For a fleeting second, the world slowed. Caleb's gaze lingered. His voice dropped to a whisper, almost involuntary. "Still remember me?" Natalie paused, a crease forming on her forehead. "I'm sorry." "What?" Caleb shook his head, masking the flicker of memory. "Nothing. Just thought you looked familiar." She smiled politely, already turning to the next order. She didn't know yet that the man she had just brushed off wasn't just a billionaire. He was also the same boy she had once shared a sandwich with outside a shelter, though only Caleb remembered that now. The next morning, as dawn stretched its golden light across Nashville, a sleek black sedan stopped at the corner of Pine and 4th. Caleb Walker sat quietly in the back seat, staring at the familiar food truck he had discovered just the day before. His driver glanced at him through the mirror. "Same place, Mr. Walker?" Caleb nodded. "Yes, same place." Stepping out, he joined the small line of regulars. People chatted casually, warming their hands with steaming cups. And there she was, Natalie, flipping waffles for a young mother and her toddler. The way she smiled at the child, slipping an extra berry onto the plate, made Caleb's chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. By the third morning, when Caleb appeared again, Natalie smirked as though she had been expecting him. "You again?" she teased, already pouring him a cup of black coffee. "I'm starting to think you don't actually live in an office tower." Caleb smiled faintly. Maybe I just like the coffee. Really? She raised an eyebrow, sliding the cup toward him. Because I've noticed you never order food. Not once. I'm not much of a breakfast person, he admitted. Her lips curved into a grin. So what's the deal, on some billionaire diet? He blinked. Something like that. Natalie shook her head, laughing softly. Well, for the record, coffee doesn't count as a personality. Caleb couldn't help it. He laughed too. A real laugh, not the kind he wore in boardrooms or at networking events. For the first time in years, he felt lighter. Touché. I guess I'll have to work on developing some character before tomorrow. Good, because sarcasm is free here, but muffins, you've got to earn those. Their banter quickly became a ritual. Every morning, Caleb hesitated before ordering, eyes flicking to the menu like he might ask for more. But he always stuck with coffee. Still, Natalie remembered every detail. Medium roast, no cream, 1 sugar, stirred after the 3rd sip. She treated it like second nature, like remembering someone's kindness was simply part of who she was. And Caleb noticed everything about her, the way she tied a shoelace for a little girl whose mother's hands were full, how she slipped an extra roll to Mr. Lorenzo, the man in the wheelchair who came by often, how she hummed quietly while wiping down napkin dispensers, completely unbothered by the world rushing around her. You always remember what people like, Caleb commented one morning, accepting his coffee. Natalie looked up, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. That's kind of the job, isn't it? Not everyone does it like you. Something in his tone made her pause. It was unguarded, raw. For a split second, she saw a different side of him, but before she could ask, the line grew busy again, and the moment slipped away. That night, high above the glittering city in his luxury apartment, Caleb poured himself a drink and pulled out a small wooden box. Inside lay a worn napkin, faded and fragile. In loopy handwriting, the words still read, "Don't forget, you have a future." His fingers trembled as he unfolded it, remembering the girl who once handed it to him along with half a sandwich. He had carried that moment with him ever since, and now he was almost certain Natalie was that same girl. By the 4th week, Caleb had settled into his unusual routine. Every morning he left the world of numbers, reports, and board meetings to stand in line at Sunrise Bites. And every morning Natalie greeted him with a teasing remark and a fresh cup of coffee. Their exchanges were light, playful, but beneath them was something unspoken. Caleb felt it every time her eyes lingered a second too long, or when their fingers brushed as she handed him his order. Then, one afternoon, the weather changed suddenly. Dark clouds rolled in, and without warning, heavy rain crashed down over Nashville. The streets turned silver with streams of water. People scrambled for cover, umbrellas popping open like blossoms. The line at the food truck scattered in seconds. Natalie was already outside, rushing to save her tables and condiments. She fought with the latch of a stubborn folding chair, her hair plastered against her cheek. "Come on, you stubborn thing," she muttered, tugging harder. "Let me help." The voice was calm, steady. She turned and found Caleb standing there, a large black umbrella shielding them both from the downpour. His shirt was damp, his tie abandoned, his dark hair sticking to his forehead. "You're going to get drenched," she said breathlessly. "Too late for that," he answered with a small smile, gripping the other end of the table. Together they folded and stacked everything, until the last of it was safe under cover. Natalie ducked beneath the truck's awning, shivering slightly. Caleb followed, though he kept the umbrella tilted above her, as if determined that not a single raindrop should touch her again. "Thanks," she said, brushing rain off her arms. "Most people would have just run for cover." His gaze lingered on her. "You're not most people." For a moment, neither spoke. The rain drummed on the tin roof, filling the silence with its steady rhythm. Then Caleb's voice grew softer, more vulnerable. "Do you think people can change because of one moment?" Natalie tilted her head. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said slowly, "if your life was going one way and then someone did something small but powerful, could it really change everything for you?" She studied his face. This wasn't the usual witty, guarded man who came for coffee. This was someone asking a question that mattered. "If the moment is strong enough," she said gently, "then yes, I think it can." Caleb nodded, his eyes distant, as though seeing another time and place. His voice lowered. "I was 10, living in a shelter outside Knoxville. My mom had just left. No note, no goodbye. I sat on the cold steps outside the food line, crying and trying to hide it." Natalie's chest tightened. "This girl came out with 2 sandwiches," he continued, "and she sat down next to me. She didn't try to fix anything. She just gave me half and handed me a napkin with words scribbled on it." His gaze flickered to hers, fragile and searching. It said, "Don't forget you have a future." Natalie's breath caught. Her fingers went still at her side. She remembered that day. The boy with dirt-stained cheeks, trembling hands, and eyes full of silence. She had written those words in a hurry, not realizing they'd stay with someone forever. Her throat tightened. She wanted to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Caleb looked away, almost embarrassed. "It sounds silly, I know, but I kept that napkin. It was the first time I believed someone actually saw me." Natalie blinked back sudden tears. The storm outside raged on, but inside the little food truck, another storm had quietly begun, one born not of thunder, but of memory and recognition. The rain had stopped by the following morning, leaving the streets of Nashville washed clean and glistening under soft sunlight. Sunrise Bites was busy again, regulars laughing and chatting as Natalie moved effortlessly around the griddle. And, as always, Caleb was there, slipping into line like he belonged. It had become their rhythm, his quiet presence, her teasing remarks, their laughter hidden between orders. But beneath the surface, something heavier stirred. Natalie couldn't shake the memory of what Caleb had confessed in the storm, the boy, the napkin, the shelter. Could it really have been him? That night, while sorting through an old tin box of keepsakes in her apartment, Natalie found it. A fragile napkin folded carefully among bracelets and photos, written in her younger hand, "Don't forget you have a future." Her breath caught as the truth hit her. That boy was Caleb. The revelation shook her. But before she could decide how to face it, the world decided for her. The next morning, the peace shattered. A black SUV screeched to a halt by the curb. Doors flung open, and reporters spilled out, cameras flashing, microphones shoved forward. "Caleb Walker, CEO of Walker Innovations," one shouted. "Is it true you've been living a double life?" another demanded. "Why pretend to be a regular customer, Mr. Walker? Is this just a publicity stunt?" Natalie froze, coffee slipping from her hand and spilling across the pavement. Her heart thudded painfully in her chest. Walker. The name hit her like lightning. She turned to him, her voice trembling. "You're Caleb Walker." "That Caleb Walker?" The cameras turned to capture her stunned face. Caleb stepped forward quickly, shielding her from the reporters. "This is private property. You need to leave." His tone was sharp, but the crowd only pushed closer. A reporter called out, "So the food truck girl was just part of the act?" Natalie's stomach dropped. "The food truck girl?" she whispered, disbelief tightening her throat. She turned back to Caleb, her eyes wide, hurt flashing in them. "So what were you doing here, playing some game? Pretending to be someone else while you sat in my kitchen, listened to my stories, laughed at my jokes? Was all of that just fake?" "No," Caleb said desperately, his voice breaking. "Natalie, I swear it wasn't a game. I didn't lie to trick you. I didn't want you to look at me like everyone else does. I wanted to be seen as me, not as a CEO or a wallet." Her lips trembled, but her voice cut sharp. "Then why hide it? Why not just tell me the truth?" "Because I was afraid," he admitted, his tone raw. "Afraid you'd stop looking at me the way you did when you thought I was nobody." Natalie's eyes filled with unshed tears. "Well," she whispered, stepping back into the food truck, "it's too late for that." She shut the door behind her, the clang of metal slamming between them louder than the shouts of reporters. Caleb stood outside, surrounded by flashing cameras, but the only thing he saw was her turning away. The streets of Nashville felt quieter after that day. Sunrise Bites, once alive with chatter and the scent of fresh coffee, now sat locked behind a fence in a repair lot. Its bright yellow paint looked dull without Natalie's laughter to bring it to life. Inside her small apartment, Natalie sat at her laptop, staring at the words on the screen. For sale, used food truck, good condition, needs love. Her chest tightened at that last part. Love. The very thing she no longer felt she had. "Are we not cooking today?" Lucas asked softly. He shuffled into the room, still in his pajamas, his hair sticking up in messy tufts. Natalie turned, forcing a smile. "Not today, baby." "But it's Friday," he frowned. "Mama's melt day." Her throat constricted. She pulled him close, hugging him tightly. "I know. I'm sorry." Lucas tilted his head, his voice quiet but sure. "Did someone hurt your heart?" Natalie's eyes burned. She pressed her face into his shoulder. "Yes." Across town, Caleb sat alone in his gleaming office at Walker Innovations. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline, but the view felt empty. His assistant knocked gently. "Mr. Walker, the Zurich investors are here." "Cancel it," Caleb said without looking up. "But—" "I said cancel it." The door closed, leaving him with nothing but silence. He reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a small tin box, worn from years of moving between shelters, dorms, and offices. Inside lay the napkin. Faded, fragile, but still legible. "Don't forget you have a future." He ran his fingers across the words. Natalie's words, the very reason he had believed he could build a future at all. And now that future felt meaningless without her. Days later, Caleb found himself at the Nashville Small Business Honors Gala. He hadn't planned to speak, but when the announcer called his name, he stepped onto the stage. The ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and polished silverware, but he ignored it all. His eyes found only one person standing at the back near the exit, Natalie. Her breath caught, but she didn't move. "I was asked to talk about leadership tonight," Caleb began. His voice was calm, steady, but carried something raw beneath it. "About innovation, about success. I had a whole speech written out, but I threw it away because none of it felt real anymore." The room stilled. "There's a woman I met not long ago," he continued. "She ran a food truck. I ran a corporation. She served healing. I served numbers. And yet, I was the one who was fed." Gasps echoed softly through the crowd. "She didn't care who I was. She only cared if I said thank you, if I gave my place in line to someone older, if I remembered that people matter more than profits. And I lied to her. Not because I wanted to deceive her, but because I was afraid she'd stop looking at me like I mattered if she knew my name." He paused, searching the crowd until his gaze locked with Natalie's. "I don't deserve her forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it." Silence followed. No applause, no polite chatter, only the sound of his heart pounding as he stepped down, walking slowly toward the back of the room where she stood frozen, tears shimmering in her eyes. The next morning, Nashville stirred awake under soft golden light. Natalie unlocked the side door of Sunrise Bites, not to cook, but simply to sit inside and remember. She had pulled the truck out of storage, unsure whether she could ever love it again. But she wasn't alone. Caleb was already there, standing a few feet away. No suit, no chauffeur, no polished mask of a CEO, just jeans, a worn navy jacket, and tired eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. "I didn't want to knock," he said softly. "Didn't want to force my way in." "You're persistent," Natalie replied, her voice steadier than she felt. He smiled faintly. "So are you." A silence lingered, heavy but no longer sharp. Then Caleb pulled a folder from his satchel and held it out. Natalie hesitated before taking it. Inside was a formal business proposal, expansion plans for Sunrise Bites, 5 new locations across Tennessee. At the bottom, one line stood out. Majority ownership, 51%, Natalie Quinn. Her eyes widened. "You're giving me control?" "Yes." "Why would you give that up?" He stepped closer, his voice low. "Because you taught me love isn't about owning, it's about offering." Then, instead of a ring, he pulled out a spoon, a simple metal spoon, engraved with her grandmother's name. He dropped to one knee. "Natalie Quinn," he said, his voice shaking, "will you be my partner? In business, in life, in everything." Tears welled in her eyes, spilling into laughter. "Only if you promise never to pretend again." "Never," he whispered. She pulled him into her arms, and for the first time since everything had fallen apart, she felt like she was home. 6 months later, a small chapel filled with the scent of fresh bread and coffee. Sunlight streamed through the windows, spilling across familiar faces. Caleb stood nervously at the altar, his tie crooked. "She's not running, boss," his best man, James, his former driver, whispered with a grin. "I know," Caleb said, his voice unsteady. "Still feels like a dream." The doors opened. Natalie walked down the aisle in a simple ivory dress, her hair loose and golden in the morning light. In her hands, instead of a bouquet, she carried the engraved spoon tied with a ribbon. Lucas clapped wildly from the front row, his oversized suit jacket slipping off his shoulders. Around him sat customers, friends, and board members alike. Mr. Hargrove with his cane, Rosa, Miguel, and even the construction workers who had once loaned Natalie their tools. It wasn't just a wedding, it was a family. "You look perfect," Caleb whispered when she reached him. "You clean up pretty well, billionaire boy," she teased. The officiant smiled. "Do you, Caleb Walker, take Natalie Quinn as your wife, your partner, your late-night taste tester?" "I do, every day forever." "And do you, Natalie Quinn, take Caleb Walker as your husband, your co-founder, your soft-hearted CFO?" "I do," she said through tears, "even if he still can't cook an egg." Their kiss was imperfect, messy, and real. Cheers filled the chapel. Next door, in their new Sunrise Bites restaurant, the walls were lined with framed napkins, thank you notes from customers, doodles, and in the center, the one that started it all. "Don't forget you have a future," because some love stories don't begin with sparks. They begin with sandwiches, with kindness, with second chances, and this one had finally found its way home. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.